Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall, it's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to the post-FSU versus Wake Forest edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, which is brought to you by Alumni Hall, where you will find licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I'm joined today by Osceola publisher Jerry Kutz, managing editor Bob Ferrante, Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein, and Osceola football analyst and former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva. Before we get started today, I do want to remind Osceola subscribers that you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases and to sign up for your membership card to present for in-store purchases. All right, guys, there's a lot to cover after FSU's 35-14 loss to Wake Forest on Saturday that left FSU with an 0-3 record for the first time since 1976. Simply put, the better football team won the game on Saturday. Wake looked like an experienced football team that knew who it was and what it needed to do to win a football game. FSU looked like a young football team, still trying to figure out its identity and trying to discover what it can do well enough consistently to win a football game. We're going to address a lot of these issues in detail as we get into this podcast, but I want to start with Bob. What was your one biggest takeaway coming out of this game on Saturday against Wake?
I think a team that looks for confidence early in games didn't get it. I think the first quarter snowballed on Florida State, and the defense tried, bent and bent badly after the, getting the interception and Corbin fumbles. The sudden change hit the defense pretty hard. And then again with that roughing the punter, the sudden change hit the defense again. They felt like they were off the field. They felt like they had accomplished their job and then back out on the field. I think as much as we want to criticize the defense, I just think that first quarter got away from Florida State and it just snowballed.
Mark?
The biggest thing I took away is that Mike Norvell has some growing to do as a head coach. I think I love his energy. I love his work ethic. I love everything that I've seen and everything that I've heard, leading up to this point. But it's obvious there's some flaws in his process and his execution. And he needs to take a deep, hard look at what he's doing, how he does it, because there's a lot of things I don't know. Like, I don't know how he handles his coaches. I don't know how he handles, is he a micromanager? Is he just a micromanager on offense? I mean, what are the things that, the things that bring success, for him are not working here. So he's got to take a deep, hard look at himself, and he's going to have to pivot in some way.
Jerry?
I think we got real problems on our offensive line. We worried about injuries. We got them. We have 3 projected starters out for the year. Well, out this year, not necessarily for future games. But it's really hard to get anything going on offense right now. Whether they try to run it or whether they try to throw it, they're not getting it done.
Fish?
Before this game started and before the season even started, I think you and I, Pat, talked about this. I'm not real shocked with the result, meaning I thought Wake Forest of the first 3 games was my biggest concern, just because talking to a prior coach, I remember talking to him, he goes, Fish, we could get up for Miami, the Notre Dames, the Floridas. It's easy to get the kids up for that game. It's the Wake Forests that we worry about. Going on the road for the first time this year with an inexperienced team that was fragile mentally coming off those last 2 games. The result was not shocking that they lost. It's the way they lost. The team got thoroughly beat. And honestly, if it wasn't for Dave Clawson deciding to play a prevent offense, this game could have been a lot worse. That final drive, I think they fumbled and they basically took the foot off the gas, and they could have made it a lot worse. But I think Florida State it's a young team, and there's a lot of new players and a lot of new faces. And it just, when things go south, I mean, Mark's been on those type of teams, I'm sure, before in his career, that when you have these teams that have a lot of moving pieces like this, stuff like this could happen, and happen really quickly, especially in college football where emotion plays so much. They need good things to happen to them at the beginning of a game, just so they don't allow this to continue to happen. And I still think there's things for them to play for. I think the team we're going to get into it more in this podcast. I think that they could get better as a football team and better as a program. But we knew, anybody that you guys watch this team during spring and also the fall, that this team was flawed, and that that these things were possible. Like everybody thought, there's a lot of people out there that thought this team was 8-4, 9-3, 7-5. This team was going to fight to get to 6 wins, and nothing I've seen so far in the first 3 games has changed my opinion on that.
Agreed. And listen, they were going to have to play their best team football to beat Wake, and they didn't play complimentary football. The offense couldn't sustain drives, and the defense couldn't get off the field, especially in the first half, and that really hurt them. As you guys said, it kind of snowballed on them. All right, talking point number 2 for today. We thought FSU having 2 quarterbacks. This is a listener question, actually. We thought FSU having 2 quarterbacks might be a strength for this team, but after 3 games, at least to me, it doesn't feel that way. And is it time for Mike Norvell to make a definitive choice between Mackenzie Milton and Jordan Travis? And to even go a little bit further, is it time to give Chubba a shot? And this is for Bob and Mark.
Yeah, I think with Chubba, he's still in that developmental stage. I wanted to see him get some playing time against Jacksonville State. It's the only way you're going to get better is to get on the football field on a Saturday. It obviously didn't happen. The big issue I have with declaring a number 1, and I think Norvell has declared that it's Mackenzie Milton before the Wake Forest game. But the problem is both of these guys have an injury history, one way more severe than the other. You can't truly count on having Mackenzie every week or Jordan every week. You may have to fly through practices with just one. It's going to make game planning very difficult. I'm just not sure you can truly declare that one is your guy. You're going to have to kind of figure it out through the week how it's just going to work best.
Mark?
If we're ever going to find an identity on offense, then we need to I think we need to settle on one, and go, because we got to win the next game. So what is the situation going into the next game? And to me, it's Milton. I think you need to settle on Milton, because if we're going to win some of the games in the future, we're going to have to have an efficient passing game. And I don't think Jordan gives you that. Jordan gives you the deep ball and he gives you the running game. But if none of those work, you don't have anything left, right? I think Milton gives you the best chance because of the way he can process, read defenses. If we can design an offense around his skill set, I think that gives us the best chance to win, in my opinion.
Jerry or Fish, y'all have anything to add to the quarterbacks?
I think they need to go to 1. And the big problem is neither of them have played well enough to take that spot. That's my big concern, is that, and I was pushing the Milton, hey, listen, go after him. We were the first ones to really push that narrative. What I've seen from him, I'm concerned that this kid he's injured still. He just does not look healthy. I mean, when he made when on that 4th down and 2, it literally looked like he was dragging that leg to go literally 6 inches. And I just hope he doesn't get hurt again, especially behind that offensive line. If they could protect him, you got to go with Milton, and if they could run the ball. If they can't protect him, then I'm going with Jordan. It all depends on that O-line. If they could get 5 guys to work together, but if they can't protect him, you have to go with Jordan Travis. If you can't protect him, then you have to go with Milton, because he, like Mark said, he gives you the better chance to make plays, especially in the passing game.
Jerry, anything on the quarterbacks?
Well, just the fact, like Bob said, we haven't had a game yet that one of them hasn't gotten hurt.
Yep.
We haven't gone a week at practice that one of them hasn't missed. So I just don't see how we're going to go through this year without both of them.
Yeah.
But to your point, if a guy has a hot hand this week at practice, I would definitely try to go the whole game with him if you can.
One other thing, Chubba's not the answer. To the fan, he's just not ready. If he's ever going to be ready, he's definitely not ready now to take over behind this O-line. And what you would crush that kid.
Yeah, if you want to irreparably damage a young quarterback, throw him behind this group.
Yeah,
you know? I think we've seen that one time before, didn't we?
Hey, you got one of you guys mentioned already, which goes to point number 3, FSU's offensive identity. What we saw with Wake Forest was a team that exactly knew who it was on offense, how to utilize its talent, its strengths, and work around its weaknesses. Mark and Fish, why is FSU struggling to find its own identity despite having a head coach who is offensive minded? And after 3 games, what should FSU's identity offensively be moving forward?
Yeah, this is the one that perplexes me the most is, if I'm in that room and I'm trying to work with what we have, looking at our offensive line, looking at what our strengths and weaknesses are, it doesn't seem to match what we try to do on the field. And I mean, for me, I would think, you know what, we got to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands really quick. So we need some kind of, a quick intermediate passing game where guys aren't where guys are scheming, where guys are getting open with their pads turned to a guy if it's zone, and if it's man, they keep running across, lots of crossing routes, stuff like that, stuff that the quarterback can just get the ball out of his hand quick. Slant flats, curl flats, rollouts. I mean, just stuff I see other teams doing every week. It seems like we drop back the throw and it's, 12, 15, 20-yard routes and we're trying to hold the ball and whatnot. The running game has been relatively successful. We got 3 really good running backs. Scheme the running game in a way that we can have interchangeable offensive alignment. That's why I love the zone, because the zone, the assignments for each offensive lineman is the same regardless of the position that you play. It's a small triangle that you work each pair of offensive linemen or depending on certain things, but you can take your right tackle and play him at left guard, and it's the same assignment. So you can plug and play no matter what. That's why the pros utilize it so much, because it's easy to carry 6-8 offensive linemen and run the same scheme. So because of the limitations we have there, to maybe move in those kinds of directions. So keeping things simple, doing things that get the ball out of the quarterback's hand really fast. I mean, we screened halfway decent, it seemed like, but it seems to me we're trying to do things, running Mackenzie Milton on a 4th and 2 and trying to hit him a quarterback sneak with a guy that has his leg just got cleared to play football. It doesn't seem real smart to me.
Yeah, we heard about the Wildcat last week. It seems like if you're going to run that play, you put Deshaun Corbin in the game and let him have that. But anyway, that's
yeah. And I'm probably being a little hard on the quarterback sneak. I mean, that's easy execution. Yeah. I mean, that's take the snap and lunge forward and get behind your offensive line. If you can't execute that, then I don't know where you're at.
Well, listen, you mentioned the offensive line and answering that question, and that's where we're going to go to with talking point 4. We knew with its best 5 playing coming into this year that there were still going to be questions about FSU's offensive line play, particularly as it concerns protecting the passer. They have struggled even with its best players on the field. As Jerry has mentioned in his article he wrote today and is published for our Osceola subscribers, with 2 starters out, it had trouble producing in the running game, averaged just over 3 yards per carry against Wake Forest, first time held under 100 yards this season in rushing. At this point, the personnel is what it is. You may have some guys one week, you may not have guys others. How do you game plan around this, Mark, and what should they be trying to do with this offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a little bit already. Here's the thing. We're in the game 4. When you're in a game week, you can't overhaul an offense or a running game in a game week. You can't even do it in an off week. So we have what we have in terms of, what that is. Now, maybe we need to reduce the inventory some and practice what we do really well and perfect that and drill that and just hone it down to a gnat's rear end, right? Because that's the best chance you have, because making wholesale changes now during game week, that's not going to work. That's just going to get you in a deeper hole, and it's going to get everybody confused.
Hey, Fish, going back to you on offensive identity, what do you think Florida State needs to do to create its offensive identity?
I mean, you guys may think I'm a little – I just think they're being too cute right on offense.
I agree.
I just – every time I watch them and they have successful plays, their running game is very good. Like, honestly, their running game is a lot better than I thought it would be with this backfield. If I did one thing, I would change up, and I think Toa Philly, sometimes I think he's one of the better receivers on the team. I wouldn't mind seeing him maybe getting moved into the slot. And when you have some of these guys on the field, just because he has really good hands. And like Mark said, they need to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quicker. The cuteness of the offense where they try so much. I remember going back early on when Jimbo had Christian Ponder early on in his career. He simplified the offense. And I think they got to do that with these guys. Just simplify it, find the stuff that works for each guy. Say, hey, listen, what are the 5 to 10 plays you feel most comfortable? And I think with these teams, you don't have to be fancy. Just go out, run the plays that you're good at. They're trying too much. Like, I think they're trying to overdo it, and it's causing so much problems. And like and they just keep compounding it. And I know you're going to talk about the defense. You know how you help out the defense? Sustaining drives, just run the ball, keep your defense off the field. Like, the defense is taking a beating the first 3 weeks from the fans and everything. And I personally think the offense is a bigger problem right now.
That's why I say
disagree.
That's why I say reduce the inventory of plays. I think we have too much, and we don't do any one thing well. And so when you say trying to get an offensive identity, that's why we don't do anything well. So let's hone down on what we do really good, and let's just really just out execute people in what we do. Just like Wake Forest, over and over. Yeah, I mean, they
don't run a ton of plays, Wake Forest, but they're very good at what they run. They execute very well.
Hey, I want to add on something to this, because when you said they were being cute, Fish, it kind of stuck in my head. But last week we saw a series where Mackenzie Milton and Jordan Travis were both in this game at the same time. In fact, for 4 consecutive plays, we didn't see any of that on Saturday against Wake Forest. What should they do with do you want to see that again, Mark?
I don't know.
Let me say this. That situation to me, we didn't do one last week for obvious reasons, but to me, that spoke to me that we did not take that game seriously.
Yeah.
To Fish's point, we're trying to be cute and try to show everybody how smart we are.
Yeah.
And I think that goes down to a little bit of an ego check with, people who are supposedly wonder kids, right? Or just they're, and Mike, who's supposed to be this offensive guru, and they're trying to show everybody how smart they are. Throw that crap out, man. Your job's to win games.
I mean, if you go back and you ask some of the guys, whether, even Kez McCory, go ask someone like that, they only ran a few plays even way back then. They were so good at running them. And I'm sure Jerry could jump in. But I think right now, like, they just need to find, like I said, what works. And you could tell, you look at Trayshawn Ward and Corbin, those two work. I think Toa Philly, he'll give you something as far as some big plays. But right now, those are your two war horses that you need to rely on. Pound the ball with those guys, sustain drives, punts are okay. You can win games 20-7. Listen, the one thing this team needs to do is win. It doesn't matter how they do it. If it's ugly, nobody's going to care if you lose a game or win a game 20-17. At this point, they just want to see you win. They don't have to get so cute and fancy with all these different formations. And then, listen, when they're good enough to run all that crap, fine. But right now, they're not. They need to simplify it. They need to tone this thing down, and they need to just come out and play a good, sound game from top to bottom for 1 week instead of, this herky-jerky style they play on offense. Like I said, everybody's ripping on the defense. I personally feel that the offense has been a bigger disappointment just because you have a head coach that's supposed to be an offensive guru. And I have a ton of respect for Mark Norvell and what he's done as an offensive coach. But you know what? If you're a great offensive coach, you figure it out. Like, this should not look like this in year 2 with this guy and what they're able to do. I even think he would tell you that they're not where they want to be.
Well, you mentioned the defense a couple of times, and I think most people have been impressed with what they've seen from the front four, even though the pass rush was not what it was against Wake that it was the first 2 games. But I don't care how good they are against the rush. And this is our second list of question. FSU secondary was a primary concern coming into the season, and it still very much is after 3 games. Over the course of the last 12 games, opposing quarterbacks have been doing a combination of 2 things: having extremely efficient nights throwing the ball while completing a high number of passes that go for huge chunks of yardage. FSU ranks 116th in the nation in pass defense and 94th in opposing quarterback completion percentage. How do they shore this up? Because as long as teams can pass the ball against Florida State like this, it doesn't matter how much they stop the run. They're going to throw the ball 50 times a game against them. Jerry, Mark, Fish, do they play more man coverage and blitz some more off of it? Do they play more zone coverage and blitz off of it? Do they play more zone coverage and play static up front? What are the answers to what is supposed to be a deep and talented secondary?
I'll jump in real quick. First off, maybe you guys may be shocked by this. I don't think the secondary has played all that bad in all 3 games. You even go back to the Notre Dame game. Dem and Jay were there. They were in position. At least the guys are in position this year. You don't see guys just like running wide open. A lot of this stuff, and Mark can get more into this. A lot of it is the linebackers not being able to cover and dropping back further in coverage. I think it's more than just a secondary. Sometimes not getting more pressure on the quarterback. I don't think they were as good this week getting pressure on the quarterback. He seemed to have a ton of time. So it's easy to just say, all right, the guy completed a pass. It's the secondary's fault. But there's more that goes into it than just blaming those guys all the time. I think you could.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is we've seen a better pass rush than we did last year, and the secondary is still not able to cover. I mean, the numbers do not lie. The analytics do not lie.
Listen, I'm not going to take all the blame away from them, but I don't think you could put it all on them.
It's a team game, right? You got to play complementary football at all levels, just like you got to play complementary football between offense and defense. But I think it's a concern that they're playing with the lack of pass efficiency defense. And
Pat, you know this too, all right? When guys have bad habits and things go south, what do? They revert back to the bad habits.
That's
all right.
You're right.
So a lot of that stuff is guys they're just starting getting comfortable again. And then all of a sudden the shoe drops and they make mistakes. The mental mistakes come. I don't know, man. I'm just not going to put these losses all on I'm more concerned about the offense. I'm going to keep saying that. I think the defense would be a lot better if the offense could sustain drives and keep the defense off the field.
Absolutely.
I think, the best defenses do one thing, and that is they're unpredictable. I think we may be a little too predictable. Show something, play something else, blitz when they don't think you are, blitz when they don't think you are, don't blitz when they think you are, change looks, a little deception here and there, whatever. But I think for us, I agree with Fish, guys have been in position and they're just not making plays. So something in the process of how we practice, how we prepare, maybe even what they're being taught. I don't know. I'm not a secondary coach, so it's hard for me to really hone down on what exactly is going on with number 3 and Travis J and all that. I mean, there are guys in position, but they're just not making the plays. And that's been a thing here for a little while. Yeah. But I think we seem to be too predictable, and we don't give people enough problems. And part of that is personnel, but to your point, Pat, the pass rush has been better, obviously, in 4 and 11 make that are much better. Even 11. I mean, the front 4 has been much better.
But, Jerry, secondary play.
I would say this, that we're not doing the thing. I think we're seeing more linebacker commitment into the running game, and the same with safeties. That I think some of our, I don't think our linebackers are getting deep enough at times to help with slants and whatnot. And I really thought, being at the Wake Forest game and really being able to watch the ball, that their play action was extremely effective against us.
Absolutely. That was why.
That delayed vertical RPO. I mean, our linebackers had to commit to stop the run, and then he hit slants and a lot of throws over it. And so give Wake Forest a lot of credit on that. The one defensive back I thought that really got picked on was Jones. They threw slants at him pretty much the whole day. And on whether it was 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 7, they would get the first down on short throws that were typically at him rather than at Brownlee.
Well, certainly some tightening up to do in coverage, and luckily they might have a passing game against Louisville that they can get better against. They're not particularly efficient passing the ball, although if you run the ball successfully, they can throw it. But so we'll see what happens on Saturday. Fish, 0-3. A lot has been made about the FSU's recruiting class being highly ranked for 2022. A lot of concerns about how the record, good, bad, or indifferent, would affect that class. Off to an 0-3 start. Do you have any concerns on holding on to the commitments that they have?
I may be crazy in saying this. I don't.
Okay.
And my main reason why, and I keep telling everybody this, I think Norvell and his staff kind of warned these recruits about what was going to happen. I'm not saying they said, hey, we're going to start off 0-3 and we're going to have a 3-win season. But I think they told these guys, and part of the reason a lot of these guys want to come to FSU is, one, the opportunity to play right away. I think these recruits in general and the people that are around them trust these guys as coaches to get it done. This isn't a very talented team. It's probably, since I've been alive, probably one of the worst teams I feel roster-wise. And I think the only way they're going to get better is recruiting. And I think that's what they're telling these recruits. A.J. Duffy could come in and possibly start next year. Like, where else in the country is going to have that opportunity? His main concern was being able to start early. Florida State is – you can't sell a better spot to start than Florida State next year. You look at Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter wants to get on the field and make plays. He can make plays day one. They need a playmaker on offense. Offensive lineman, hey, you want a chance to start? Where else do you have that opportunity? This is an open up, it's like a casting call. These guys have a shot to play early and play often. And I don't think Florida State, what Florida State offers is a great opportunity. And I think a lot of these guys see that. If they're smart enough, they're going to realize, hey, listen, this team's not that good. They know it's flawed, and they're going to go and they're going to want to be, they either want to be part of it or not. And they feel, I think a lot of these kids, that they're the difference between this team winning these games and losing it, because the first two they could have easily won. And I think a lot of these kids are like, hey, I could have made one or two game plays in these games to bend the difference. And that's how these kids think. I don't think I've always said, I don't think most recruits think like the average fan. I mean, I've seen kids go to Rutgers when Greg Schiano had them the first year and they were 0-12, like especially Florida kids. They believe that they could go to a program like Florida State and be the difference of turning them around or not. They're not worried about wins and losses. And a lot of these kids play on losing teams. So it's not like they haven't lost before, but I personally feel they'll be all right. There's going to be one or two guys that probably decommit and go somewhere else, but that was going to happen if they went 7-5 or if they went 3-10, 12, 9 or whatever. Yeah. I think if you were realistic before this year and really looked at this roster and this team, you knew what we're seeing was a possibility. Now, you didn't want it to be to this level. We said, hey, listen, their losses had to be closer and not be blowouts, but that still could happen, and I don't think they're going to just get blown out the rest of the year. They may lose games, but I think these guys should be good enough coaches to get this team better by the end of the year and hold most of this class together.
Yeah, I agree. I think the consensus of the 5 people on this call was that this team's high mark would be around 7 wins and low water mark would be around 4 to 5, and they still got that chance. They've got 2 winnable games coming up at home, or should be competitive against Louisville, who looked much better against UCF than it did against Ole Miss, and then of course the Syracuse team that is struggling. So
And they got UMass as well. So
yeah, well, there's always that. There's always that. Thank God for UMass. All right, so now we're going to go to the mailbag with some listener questions. Jerry, you have written on this before because it has some relevance, and we've actually talked about it, I believe, 2 years ago when we first restarted the Osceola as a website. With so many young players on the 2 deep, and just so everybody knows, 36 of the 52 listed are redshirt sophomores or younger. Should Norvell go to a wholesale youth movement? And, of course, this would mean guys like Chubba Purdy playing over Milton and Travis, and Rod Orr playing over an older guy like Bavion Johnson. Jerry, what do you think about that? Too early?
I think we already are in a wholesale youth movement.
I don't disagree.
You've got redshirt freshmen starting in several positions on the offensive line, at wide receiver, really at a lot of positions. To me, the guy that if you wanted to go with youth right now, the real question, and Mark, this is one I'd like to kick over to you a little bit too, is you got a kid like Estes who came in as a center. He was recruited. He was a center in high school, and we've got him at guard, and he's not playing much. Rather than continually moving Washington from guard to tackle to center at practice and in games, why not just make the youth movement and say to Estes, you're our number 2 or number 3 center, get ready. I think it hurts you with Washington by asking him to play that position. I would say the same thing about Lloyd Willis. Now, Lloyd Willis may not be your best option at left tackle, but if Robert Scott can't play, he can't practice at left tackle, why don't you just go with Willis at left tackle, and then in the game, you're good to go.
So the reason those guys are on the depth chart is because we got no other names, right? That's number one. But, and you know this, Jerry, one of the biggest discrepancies between or differences between in positions between high school and college is the offensive line. And, to play at this level and be relatively efficient, there's so many things you have to learn that are so different than what you did in high school. So many things. And, from pass protection, you don't pass protect like in college like you do in high school. You don't, even the running game. I mean, I know the offenses kind of look similar, but how they're taught and how they're drilled and how they're, the communication, the schemes are much more difficult, And to me, I mean, right now, that's really the biggest problem we have. The reason the pass protection is so spotty when I see it, it's because of communication. It's because I thought you had him, and a guy comes running free, or a guy's like halfway on a guy. And the reason is communication, because they're not sure exactly what to do. And to put a true freshman in that position who's never played in these complex schemes can be problematic, and
that's exactly why they're going to have to go to 2 to 3 deep in the transfer portal this year for offensive linemen. You got to get some experience up front.
So, yeah. Mark, you helped me answer the question. A wholesale youth movement really isn't possible on the offensive line, is it?
It's rare. It's very rare to play as a true freshman. It really is. I've had one guy that could do it, and that was Jamar Nesbitt, and he was, a Super Bowl winning guy. Yeah. I mean, it's really hard.
All right, we're going to go deeper into the mailbag. Coming off Wake Forest, what are the 2 top things Mike Norvell and his staff need to focus on this week as they get ready to play Louisville? And Bob, I'll start with you.
You can start with penalties. That's pretty obvious. You can't. The self-inflicted stuff is not working. Florida State leads the nation in turnovers right now, 10 in 3 games. That's fumbles lost and interceptions. If you're going to give up the ball, you're going to put the defense in a bad spot, and it's just not going to play out well. I've been on the record that Florida State needs to make its identity through the run game. Got to commit to the run with the offensive line that you got. Got to make the run your commitment week in and week out, and may the chips fall where they go. But it seems pretty obvious, and I'd hate to give a really obvious answer, but I think it's penalties and turnovers.
Jerry, 2 top things you think they need to focus on this week?
Well, I think in practice, you got to try to get the 5 guys you're going to play with on the offensive line and stick with them, rep them. And I think if we had a little bit better continuity there, we'd have a lot less penalties. We're seeing a lot of self-inflicted wounds, with penalties on the offensive line and things just not getting done right up front. I think if we could solidify that, a lot of other things would fall in place.
Fish?
One, they definitely need to stick to the run. We talked about that before. I think just running the ball will just help everything out. I think it'll open up the passing game. I think it keeps the defense fresh. And just stop making the self-inflicted wound mistakes. This team just seems to get bad penalties, get turnovers at the wrong time. Just a lot of stuff. You watch when they played North Carolina last year, they played a full game of really mistake-free football. They need to have a game like that, especially this week against Louisville. So I don't know. I just think that's something they need to do.
Yeah. Mark?
Well, a couple things. Number one, what everybody already said here, you got to eliminate the things that lose games, turnovers and penalties, and that's the first thing. Missed assignments. Coach Bowden, that's 3 things he harped on every single time he talked. No turnovers, no penalties, no missed assignments. That was written. That was on the walls and everything we did. Jerry, I don't even know. Do they have officials at practice throwing flags like we used to have? No.
On Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Yeah, we haven't seen them on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I don't know what they do on Thursdays and Fridays.
Yeah, when I was at practice, we used to have Bud Williams, who was a Southeastern Conference umpire. He followed us around all practice, every drill we did. And if we were offsides, if we did something, he'd throw a flag. And Wayne would have, and Brad did it too, we'd have a GA mark down that we had a penalty and we'd have to pay for it after practice. We'd have to do a gas or some up downs or something. How you emphasize no penalties. It's one thing to say it, but you got to figure out a way to really emphasize it and make it a point of emphasis. And the same thing with turnovers. I remember when guys would fumble the ball, they had penalties they had to do things after practice to account for it. The other thing we used to do, and I don't know whether they do this, and I don't know if it's conducive to how we practice. That's the other thing. We try to go so fast all the time. And when we run plays in practice, I'm sure we're doing no huddle down the field. When we did, of course, we huddled, so it's different. I understand that. But if we didn't execute a play exactly perfect, every position, run exact route, block the exact same guy, quarterback the exact read, back do the exact same thing you're supposed to do. If everybody didn't do it exactly right, we'd run the play again. And if we only ran 3 plays the whole practice, then we only ran 3 plays the whole practice. But everybody did it exactly right every time. So my point is this: emphasize the things that win games and figure out a way to hold players accountable to that during the course of the week. And the other thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to find some way to give these guys confidence. We got to go into that game not hoping we win, but knowing we're going to win.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you this question because this is the last subscriber question, and I'm glad you hit on it. Obviously, there are fundamental schematic things they're going to have to work out as they get ready. We'll go over corrections at tonight's practice and what went wrong and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But you're also dealing with the psyche of a young football team who is now 0-3 and is facing a lot of criticism on social media, as are the staff. But the kids themselves, what challenges are the coaches going to face trying to get this team that confidence that you're talking about early on? They practice today, off Monday, then back on the practice field on Tuesday. What can the staff do to try to give the team the confidence that you're talking about?
So here's what I would do. I would make sure, number one, as a staff, you better come up with a sound game plan and a path to win, right? Guys, this is how we win this game, and lay it out there, right? And it better be sound, and you better be right, number one. And that's what we pay them for. But number two is put them in positions to win, that they execute it. That they say, you know what, we eliminate the mistakes, we execute this game plan, we are going to win the game. And so by Thursday, when they're executing the plan, we're doing it against Air, doing it against Bags, but boom, they know exactly going into the game how they're going to win the game and what they need to do, and they've done it in practice. Because that's the only way you're going to. It's like when you study for a test and you have that test honed down to a natural rear end, and you're going to go in and you're going to take the test in 5 minutes, and you're going to ace it, right? It's the same thing, and you got to drill that into them. You got to say, if you just do what we say do, you will win the game, and leave no doubt in their mind that they're going to do that. That's the only way they're going to have the confidence to go in there to do it. And then you can point to say, you know what, if we don't execute, this is what happens. When we do execute, this is what happens. I think at least we have the Notre Dame game kind of fall back on and say, you know what, because we executed pretty good. We had less penalties, turnovers, all that kind of thing, and we almost beat the number 9 team in the country. And you can at least point to that and say it can be done. The last two games we've lost, they've all been self-inflicted. So we can go into the game harping on those things. But man, you got to give them confidence that they're going into that test with the answers already.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a big game, as the rest of them will be, as they try to, get to 6 or 7 wins and get to a bowl, which, obviously we thought was the goal for this team going on. But as usual, as we've become accustomed to, there were no shortage of things to talk about as it comes to FSU football, and there have not been over the last 3 years. And, not to start the team on it, Arch fan base, but certainly just 3 games into this season and just 12 games into Mike Norvell's tenure, you would think things will get better as this team becomes more experienced on the field, particularly with being so young. But we'll see what happens going forward. I do want to thank our Osceola subscribers and our Seminole Sideline podcast listeners for tuning in. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com. Click on the subscription tab and go to the discount code field and enter FSU20, FSU20 to get a 20% discount off our annual rate of $74.95. Also, if you want to try us out for a month, we have a $6.95 per month rate. But we'd love to get you a chance to read what we have to say on a weekly basis about football, basketball, baseball, all the sport. We cover Florida State in its totality. Also want to thank Alumni Hall for sponsoring the Seminole Sidelines podcast. And I want to thank Mark, Bob, Jerry, and Fish for joining me again this week. And we'll be back next week after the Louisville game to talk about what we learned about Florida State after Game 4. And hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!